right. Hey, it's your girl Sarah. Today we'll be talking about Dynasty. I actually watched the reboot when it came out in 2017. I watched the first episode like when it aired, and then I was like half in, half out. But then I waited until Netflix released the whole season, like after the season ended, and they released the whole season, so I could binge it. So I got really into Dynasty after it was released on Netflix. And then a few days ago, I was just messing around on Pluto, and I realized Dynasty, the original series from like the 80s, has its own channel. So I was like, hold on, let me see if I could watch the original series and then go back to the reboot from 2017 and let's see what's the difference and what they changed and what they kept in. Because, what was it, back in the day, they even like around 2017 Dynasty was the second reboot of like the Dynasty in like Dallas, because it was like the whole thing of them bringing back Dynasty in Dallas. I'll definitely get into Dallas because I've never really seen either of those, but we'll see what the original Dynasty got going on, because I loved Elizabeth Gillies in the 2017 one. Obviously from watching Victoria's growing up, I loved her, and she was the only reason why I wanted to watch it. But then that first episode definitely got me hooked when she bitch slapped Crystal in the face. So I was like, hell yeah, I'm finna watch this show. And then they had some cute looking black men on there too. So, ain't nothing wrong with them eye candy. All right, so let's get to the original series. So we start the season out with meeting Blake Carrington, who is the CEO of Denver Carrington Oil. He is recently engaged to a Crystal Jennings, who seems like she comes from humble beginnings. She's at a bridal shower with all her friends, and they're like, oh, Crystal, don't forget us little people when you move into your big mansion. Clearly, this is a tale as old as time, with a young woman dating an older man. Maybe not specifically for his money, but, having all that money doesn't hurt. So she's marrying Blake Carrington of the Denver Carrington Oil fortune. And obviously, there's some remnants of an old relationship. And then we cut to meeting said old relationship with Matthew. I think his name Matthew Blaisdell. So he basically is in the Middle East. Oh, he got shipped out there for about a year. Seems very suspicious. Within that year, I think Blake got engaged or proposed to Crystal. So fishy there already. So we see Matthew in the Middle East dealing with the explosion of an oil rig out there, and then obviously the officials of that area. I think they said either Iran or Iraq. I think it was Iran. So they're dealing with the officials over there because they literally just blew up a whole oil rig. And then Blake sends a company plane of everyone who was stationed out over there back home. And I think that includes Steven, whose drunk ass is on the plane causing a ruckus, as people with drinking problems do. Clearly, runs in the family. I feel like even though when the younger ones have a drinking problem, it's more reckless because they're younger, but we ain't gonna surpass that the parents also have a fucking drinking problem, because I think later in that episode he says to the butler, oh, give me 3 shots of freaking, what is it, cognac, Hennessy, something like that. Child, you don't need 3 shots of nothing. While Blake is like driving around town, he like makes his rounds, and then I think he gets back to his compound. Then we meet Fallon Carrington, his daughter, who loves horses, or he taught her how to ride horses, and she fell in love with horses that way. We do get a shot of Crystal in her new home, planning the wedding. While she's planning the wedding, you can see her relationship with Steven. He's more accepting of Crystal joining the family than Fallon is. We see that they have more of a friendly relationship, which is nice, because when you're a stepmom coming into a family of older children, it's harder because they have their own personalities already, versus like younger kids that can just attach to you already, like, oh my God, my new mommy, It's harder as an adult to be like, you my new parent. Like, it's just harder that way. Trust me, I've been there, done that. So we know that Fallon is not as happy as Steven is about Crystal becoming her new stepmom. But we do see her and the driver, Michael, having a little bit of an affair in the garage. I don't want to do the comparisons yet, but it's just funny of that scene versus the reboot. but we'll wait till later in the video. But they're getting it on in the family garage of all their fancy cars and carriages. Like, it's 1980. What do you mean you have carriages? Whatever. And then we see that now that the little brother is back, he kind of like sneaks in and is like, hey sis, what's going on? There's a moment when Matthew and Steven get back from the airport, and Blake sends a car specifically for Matt and not Steven. He makes Steven take a cab home, and then he gives the car to Matthew to his office, purposefully making sure that he runs into Crystal as they're both leave. So as she's leaving his office, he's coming in and they're having an interaction. She peeps that it was intentional and it's like, hey dude, what's going on here? And he don't give a fuck, because you could tell he's already playing his mind games. And that's the thing with older men, especially with money in that situation. When you have the power, I feel like he holds the power over her that way because he has more money, so he feels like he can control her. But I hope Crystal got a better head on her shoulders, and she, called him out on it. Was like, I see what you're trying to do. Don't do that ever again. And then I don't think she called the engagement off. She just was like, I need to go home to figure out if I really want to be with you, because what the fuck was that? She hasn't seen him in a year, and she just got engaged to Blake within that same year. So she ends up calling Matthew and was like, hey, let's talk, because I think I still got feelings for you because I haven't seen you in a fucking year. And so they like meet each other in the meadow, and she's like, oh, do you still love me? And he's like, no, not really. Technically, he has a wife. I mean, like, he goes home to like this weird boarded up home where everything's like the curtains are covered, everything's got sheets on it. So something's going on with his wife, but you could tell that him and Crystal definitely had something going on, but no longer is there. We meet Joseph, his butler. I feel like that's gonna come in handy, When it comes to rich people, you always need to know their help. So we have Andrew, he goes to, that's like his right-hand man / business partner. And then we have Joseph, which is his like main butler of this huge house. And his house is like pretty big. Like, I feel like there's like a typical like 80s mansion where it feels like it's just like a huge warehouse room, just with like, I don't know, it just feels empty, but there's stuff in there. The whole time, Steven's getting shut up by his dad. Every time he tries to speak to him, he's like, his dad's like, I don't give a fuck about you, but he pays attention more to Fallon, and Blake wants Fallon to marry somebody rich. So Steven and Fallon are basically fighting over their father's attention, while Fallon doesn't really want anything to do with Blake, and basically is like, get him off my back. Steven is like, I really need to talk to Dad. It's really important. Like, why is he not talking to me? This is crazy. So they have that animosity between each other a little bit. Then we see Matthew meeting up with this guy named Walter. He calls him a con artist. Previously, I guess Walter almost got Matthew locked up in jail for his previous dealings, and Walter's coming to Matthew for his geological advice about how to find oil, because he has this land that he has a lease on, and he still can't find anything, and he has 5 weeks to find oil, or he has to give it up to Blake, which, why would he do that? So basically they go to the oil rig and they come up with a plan, because Matthew really needs the money since his wife is in a mental rehab and has a daughter. Her name is Lindsay. She looks like she's about like 12 or 13. They actually go visit her. They try to go visit her at the place, but unbeknownst to them, the doctors approved that she went from inpatient to outpatient. So instead of living there 24/7, she just visits there for a couple times a week to see her therapist. And they end up finding her at a diner. They have like it's a big moment of, it's a big reunion. It is kind of emotional because the last time that Lindsay saw her mom, she was like getting dragged away in a straitjacket by 2 policemen, which is very traumatic for any kid. And she was even hesitant to go see her mom in that state because, you never want to see your mom or your parent in such a compromising situation. Like, as if if someone got locked up, you never want your kid to come see you in jail. Like, that's a lot to experience, especially at a young age. So I had to get why she's so hesitant to see her mom, while she was like really sad and like didn't want to go in. But luckily they were able to go actually, meet up with her at a diner where she's working now. They have this big reunion, big moment of like Matthew wanting her to come home, which a lot of these men are very pushy. Like I'm guessing it's just the 80s or just men in general, but this is very pushy of him wanting her to come, even though she feels like she wasn't ready to come back home yet. But she asked her daughter, she was like, tell me, do you want me to come home? Instead of like having Matthew be like, yeah, you want your mother to come home? Like, no, let me ask her. Cause she seems very like emotional. Let me see if she wants to come home. So do you want, girl, not right now. My dog. So she wants to come home and, be with her mom. Or she wants her mom to come home finally so they could be a happy family. And then we see Crystal at her apartment. She is, what is it? She's at her apartment and Blake basically buys an entire forest to apologize to her, love bombing as rich people do because they have the money to do so. So he apologizes with this with a bunch of flowers and then whisks her away on his PJ to San Francisco for dinner in Little Chinatown, which is okay. I thought they actually went to China. That's what it seemed like. But no, he just said, oh, the best Chinese restaurant in San Francisco, which, I mean, it's still on the same coast. It's not that much. And on their way back from the dinner, he basically was like testing her, like, do you love me? Do you want to get married? Da 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 da. And she's still hesitant because she's not used to his whole rich lifestyle, obviously, which some typical gold diggers are very much head dive in on the lifestyle because they ready to go. They're like, oh, I want this, I want that, I want this. But it seems like, Crystal's a little more humble with her offerings. Xenia! Crystal's a little more humble with her offerings. And so basically she's like, I want to get my job back because my friends are treating me weird and I kind of want to have some normalcy to life again. So he agrees to give her a job back. So they end up making up and then the next scene is wedding prep. So now they're getting prepped for the wedding and Fallon goes into the kitchen, ends up getting the cake topper and like bites the head off the cake topper, which is hilarious. She ends up finding where Crystal is staying or Crystal is getting ready and enters the room with the attorney, basically like it's time to sign a prenup, which I feel is very manipulative because why are you waiting till the wedding day to give me the prenup? So give me a week in advance or something so that I can get my attorney figure out if I want to add things to the prenup that I want to be covered. You know what I mean? Just because you got the money doesn't mean I have something that I can't protect. I got my own things going on. You don't know that. So he wants her to sign this prenup on the day of the wedding. So she's taking her time trying to figure out if she wants to sign a prenup or is reading through everything. Fallon is there antagonizing because she doesn't want any of this to happen. While she's prepping for her wedding, we see that Matthew was at Walter's rig. They're still trying to find the oil, and then a big explosion happens. Apparently, there was like a pin that he checked that he was supposed to check the night before, and that ended up being tampered with. So he ends up in the hospital with a broken leg. When Walter comes to check up on him and realizes that the pin was tampered, he is gunning straight for Blake Carrington because he feels like Blake has something to do with it, clearly, with a gun. And mind you, this is his wedding day, so this is going to be interesting. And while all that's happening, I think it ends with the scene of Steven trying to come out to his dad, which is very progressive for the 80s. He does call him an FOG, which is definitely typical of the 80s. But Steven is gay. So that's where the disconnect is between him and his father. His father wants him to take some time away from the company. Is like, you need to take a vacation to straighten yourself out, is literally what he says. And he's trying to tell his dad, like, there's nothing to straighten out because I'm gay, Dad. Okay? So either take me or you don't. Seems like he's not taking him because he's in charge of this fortune, so he don't look like he's getting any of the fortune. And yeah, then we'll see if Crystal's actually gonna go with the wedding. She's sitting at the end of the balcony and is acting like, oh, I don't know if I want to go with the wedding. Like, girl, you want to go with the wedding. You're gonna go with the wedding because he got money, and the man that you actually was in love with has a wife who's about to move back in. Girl, go with the damn wedding. So Crystal is still contemplating her prenup with Blake. And we cut to Matthew with his daughter as he's cooking breakfast. I thought Matthew was the one that got hurt in the rig, but it was actually just some regular ass rig worker. So Matthew's fine. It was just some regular worker that got his leg broken. He's in the kitchen with his daughter, cooking up breakfast. She's reading the newspaper and sees that Crystal's getting married to Blake. And he's really not making it inconspicuous at all. He's like very obvious with his longing, with him longing at the newspaper and her picture. And the daughter's like, oh, why did we get invited? It's a Carrington wedding. And it's like, child, there's a reason why we ain't get invited. The mom knows what's up because he goes upstairs to check up on Claudia and is like, hey, why are you not in bed with me, or why are we not husband and wife? Like, you begged me to come home, but you're not touching me, you're not showing affection, it's being weird. And then she recites this poem, apparently she remembered from school, said, humongous, humongous, women are monogamous, humongous, humongous, men are polygamous, which is very weird. I mean, it's not wrong, but it's a very weird poem that she remembered from grade school. So she confronts him about possibly cheating, because like, I haven't seen you almost a year and a half, you're not being affectionate towards me, what's going on? And he's just like, he didn't say you're crazy, but he was like, nothing's wrong, I've been away for so long, things gotta get back to normal, you know, things don't just happen overnight, even though he begged her to come back home, but whatever. So the wedding does go on, as we know, and Blake and Crystal are sharing their vows while we see we see Matthew like longingly look out at the meadow that him and Crystal were like secretly running away to, obviously contemplating if he's made the right decision, which both of you can't make the decision. He's married. That's it. He's married. You are getting married because you are currently engaged, and no longer can there be anything between you two. But there will be like some shady business dealings on Blake's side because of his jealousy for Matthew. Whatever. So after they say I do, they kiss, yada yada yada. The Carrington family are lined up and they're greeting all their guests as they're coming by, and Crystal's meeting all the rich people in Blake's life. And Fallon is standing next to Crystal, giving her the 411 on everybody. Some of the information I feel like is fake, just so Crystal can seem like she don't know what she's talking about. But then we learn that Blake owns a football team and introduces her to some of the players. And as they come up to greet Fallon, each of them like kiss her on the mouth and like almost make out with her. Like, dude, your dad is right there. The fuck is going on? Why are you like kissing all these dudes in front of your dad? And this now there's like no peck or no kiss. It was like a very longing, like a smooch, like a smooch. Like, I don't know. That's just me. I wouldn't do that in front of parents, stepmom or dad. Like, it just wouldn't be me. So they're meeting all these new people, you know, greeting the guests during the wedding. And we meet the Colbys. So we meet Cecil and Jeff Colby. Jeff is Cecil's nephew, and Cecil, I guess, is the CEO of Colby Coal Oil. So we've learned that Fallon and Jeff used to be buddy when they were younger at summer camp. I think they said like around 11 years old at summer camp. So he takes Fallon aside to try and woo her or something like that. But I think, he's starting to learn that she's a little smarter than what he remembers her to be. So they have like a battle of the wits. In this conversation, they talk about the energy business and if oil is more profitable than energy. And he mentions bear rabbits and tar babies. And as soon as he said that shit was very jarring. Because I'm like, we are saying tar babies in the 80s? What is going on here? I had to look it up. Direct definition, I guess, instead of just like the term is like a dark doll or like a dark skin colored doll. So I'm like, you couldn't just say a black doll? I'd rather use it as blacks than a tar baby. That's crazy. But whatever. So they're going back and forth, and then because I guess their conversation was so loud, Cecil overhears Fallon and how smart she is about the business. So he takes her aside and they play a game of pool. There's definitely some heavy flirting being like suggested, at least on Cecil's end. On Fallon's end, it was more of like an opportunity to possibly, you know, work with the Colbys, even though that's like her father's enemy, I think. Or at least her father's rival. So he's like, why doesn't your father have you working like a higher up? Because you clearly know what you're talking about. And she lets it be known that my father does not have black people, Jewish people Inuit people. They didn't say Inuit, but Inuit people and women in a higher position. So that makes sense. So as she's kicking his ass in this pool game, he was like, let's take a ride around the town so that we could discuss more, possibly you running one of my businesses, since your father doesn't see the your wits and your wits and your knowledge about the business that could really boost him up. So let me poach you real quick. That'd be crazy though, because we're supposed to be rivals and you're trying to poach my daughter for your business, but I digress. So Fallon gets ready for their ride around town, and she actually sees Michael in her bathtub ready for a scrub-a-dub-dub, since they obviously are fucking. But he takes his time to try and extort her for money, and in turn of not telling her father their secret. But then she ends up like almost drowning him, and it was like, basically she was like, I mean, I'm not gonna give you money. I could tell him myself and have you killed, but I'm not gonna give you money just because we have this secret. So he ends up, going back into driver mode, and does she go? Where does she go? I don't think we see her for the rest of the episode. But yeah, that was it for them. Jeff is actually walking around the wedding trying to look for Fallon, but he ends up looking for Steven, and basically is trying to gauge the temperature for Fallon. It was like, I want to marry her because, we've known each other for so long, and I think she's the right one. But Steven is trying to be like, she's not the same Fallon that you knew way back when. Like, this is a newer Fallon. She's more wittier. She's a lot more snappier. So it's like, you might not want to get married to her, but we'll see if she actually say yes. So Steven does open up to Jeff about him being gay, and Jeff is like somewhat okay with it. I mean, he has to be if you're going to marry his sister. So he's like, I'm a liberal Republican, whatever that fucking means. So he's okay with it. And then we get a cut to the Blaisdell residence, and how everybody's still on eggshells. Like, the daughter is still very, I guess, weary of her mother trying to help her out, but she doesn't want to set her mother off. So it's like everybody's still walking on eggshells around Claudia, clearly. She already told him that she wasn't ready to come home, but he insisted. So the whole family is still walking on eggshells. So as the wedding goes on this entire time, we get like small cuts to Walter driving up to the Carrington residence, which I don't know how far it is from where he was, but it feels like he lives in all the way to Timbuktu, because we just see him driving highways and byways, and it's like, when are you gonna get to the fucking compound, dude? But he finally gets there like towards the end, and everybody's coming out of the wedding, and they're like, oh, da-da-da. What is it? Crystal throws the bouquet and Steven catches it, and everyone laughs, which is very heartbreaking for Steven at the moment. But once Walter finally comes up, he confronts Blake about the tampered pin at the oil rig, and he's like, I don't know what you're talking about, ha 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 ha. But as he comes up and like confronting him, security six dogs on Walter. I mean, he's an older man, so I kind of felt bad, but then I was like, they didn't really give a fuck about dogs hurting black people, so who really gives a fuck about this? But they call off the dogs, and then he was like, take him away, but take him to the side for a private chat. So as Walter is getting his ass kicked, waiting for basically Blake to give him this private chat, Steven calls Matthew up and is like, hey, we need your help. Walter's getting his ass kicked. You need to get down here ASAP. So he gets down there, tries to help Walter out, and then Blake comes in and gives him a proposition of like, hey, I'll give you all this money for your dirt cheap land because you're not going to find anything anyway, so you might as well just give it up. But then Matthew's like, why would you give it up so quick? You might have something here. Don't just give it to him for any amount of money. And then he's like, well, who do you work for, me or Walter? He was like, well, fuck you, I work for Walter now. But as he's like saying, fuck you, I no longer work for Carrington, Crystal walks in, obviously overhearing everything. And you see that they have like a exchange in like eyes and stuff like that. And what is it? As Matthew like finally says, fuck you, Blake, I'm out, and like quits, Crystal comes in, he calls her Chris. I'm like, who's Chris? I thought you didn't have feelings for her. Why all of a sudden you calling her Chris? And I'm that's gonna bite him in the ass, especially in front of Blake, because he was like, oh, take care of her for me. And Blake is like, no worry, bud, I got this, you ain't gotta worry about that. So I was like, dude, you were trying to one up him after you just quit. Whatever. So Blake and Crystal are on their honeymoon and they're in Hawaii. And I guess in the middle of them transporting to or flying over in different islands, Blake gets a call from Andrew stating that at one of his oil rigs, the colonel got murdered, and five of his oil tanks have been blocked from being transported. So now he's shut out of luck. So he has to dash home early from his honeymoon to figure out how he's going to sustain his company while these oil tanks are being blocked. So he gets home, and we see that Fallon and Jeff are getting all buddy-buddy, but Michael, his driver, obviously sees Fallon and is basically like, hey, he's not as good as I am. Like, you're never going to find anyone better. And basically she's like, I don't really care because you were just a fuck buddy. Like, she's a young, rich girl who wants to fuck on something. Like, leave her alone. So basically he's trying to, make his point and be all macho, but she's like, I really don't care. You're still my employee. Like, I can fire you at any moment. So back at the Blasdell residence, Matthew gifts Claudia a new car because he wants her to be a little bit more independent, and apparently he's sick of driving her around. So he gives her a new car, but she's still hesitant because he gifted her to celebrate being a month out of the hospital, but it's only been a month out the hospital, and she was like, I don't know if I can handle the responsibility of a car right now. So they have a little bit of an argument. He basically is like, oh, we've been married for 15 years, and it's always something, or I'll try to do something nice, and it's always an argument, and he says, what does he say? He says, I don't like being married to a mental patient any more than you like being one. What the fuck is that? Why would you say that to her? That could have been her psychotic break to go back. Like, why would you say that to her? But I digress. So he says that to her, takes the girl and takes their daughter to, well, luckily the daughter was there, so they didn't get too out of control with the argument. He takes her to school on the way to work, and Claudia has a moment of trying to see if she was ready to drive yet, but she drives off a little bit down the road and then comes in contact with somebody else, and so she gets spooked a little bit. But lucky enough, she does get the courage to drive at some point. So we're back at the oil rig, and Walter pulls up to Matthew and is basically like, hey, I couldn't get the loan from the bank, and because I couldn't get the loan, we can't pay our workers, and because we can't pay our workers, they walked off. And they're at the bar hanging out. So if you want to go to the bar to help out get our workers, we got to go down to the bar. So they go down to the bar, and then we see that Claudia does get the courage to drive. So she tries to drive to the rig to meet Matthew to surprise him with a picnic, but he's not there. But she's not the only one looking for him because Stephen pops up basically like, hey, have you seen him? And he's like, nah, I haven't seen him. Or he was like, oh, maybe he's at the bar because men in the bar. So she's there, we're waiting for him, but I think at some point she leaves because he never comes back, as far as we don't see. So we see that Steven does go to the bar, and Matthew and Walter, they're trying to rally the workers, and they're like, hey, just trust us, we'll get the loan, or I have a loan, or something like that. They can get a loan somewhere so they can pay you for a day's work, and they come back so we can get this oil. Because obviously they're getting all these roadblocks to even continue working on the rig, but the workers are like, we're getting tired of this, we're not getting paid enough, which I totally understand. Like, if you have terrible working conditions, don't stay at the job just because. Like, I get this world revolves around money, but it's all about your mental health and your physical health at the end of the day, because this is like physical demanding work. So while they're at the bar trying to rally the workers, we see Steven walk in, and he's basically trying to ask Matthew for a job because he wants to learn the business on his own without his father. Because if he's going to learn under his father, he's going to get treated differently, as he was getting treated differently with these workers. Kurt was like, hey, aren't you Carrington's kid with that $200 shirt? You'll get dirty, da-da-da-da. And even though he tries to be all bravado and like punch one of the workers, he ends up getting that shit back and getting his ass kicked. So in hindsight, maybe he shouldn't have punched that dude in the face, but ended up getting him a job and some respect from the workers. So there's that. Back at the Carrington house, Blake is in panic mode. He's trying to figure out what he can do to get his tanks back. He's like pleading with the State Department, and him and Andrew are trying to come up with ideas on not choosing bankruptcy or not choosing to bankrupt the company to get his money back. And Fallon, he doesn't allow anyone that's not a man who's in charge of the Denver Carrington Oil, but Fallon ends up sneaking in, trying to help her father basically with her business advice on what she thinks he should do. But Andrew does take Blake aside, and we find out that Blake is the reason why Walter and Matthew are getting all these roadblocks from their rig, or in order for them to get their land so he can get the oil in a home base, if that makes sense. Because all his oil rigs are overseas, but because Walter and Matthew had this one in Denver, he thinks he can get this one over them for dirt cheap to get more money from it, because he's a slimy asshole. So Fallon is overhearing their conversation and basically offers her dad, hey, why don't you just invite Matthew over so that you guys can just talk it out and you can persuade him to come back to Denver Carrington Oil so that you can get all his leases that way, and then you wouldn't have to spend a dime on them, and then you can have them for free and get all the money you want. Which, I mean, yeah, but that's still slimy, because like you're married to his mistress, damn near. Although Fallon does give him a good idea, he still kicks her out because only men can be in there, and the women that are in there are only secretaries. They're just copying, handing the men the paper. So he kicks her out. And throughout the episode, we do see Crystal butting heads with Joseph on a lot of the things that she wants changed around the house. So like for dinner that night, she wanted to have it on the terrace, but the maid is like, no, usually Joseph likes to have dinner in here. Or she even tries to talk to the chef, and she's like, oh, I would like to change the menu up from this type of meat or something like that. And even though it feels like that the workers are stopping her, dialogue wise, it feels like it's more Joseph stopping all the workers because he is in tune with all of Blake's needs. So after Blake kicks Fallon out of his meeting, Andrew leaves to continue his doings and basically kind of clocks Fallon on what she was trying to do. He was like, so you are trying to invite Blasdale over to our house to spook Crystal, to make it seem like Blake is doing it intentionally versus him doing it business-wise so that you can get Crystal out. I see what you're trying to do here. We get it that Fallon doesn't think that Crystal is good enough, but she is tampering with something more than what she's understanding. Obviously, I feel like everyone understands Matthew and Crystal has some type of an affair, but which is the reason why Blake kind of swooped in and undermined him. This is a lot of swooping in and undermining. This is a whole lot going on. But for Fallon to suggest Matthew coming over feels like she's trying to kick Crystal out in some way. I mean, this is not the best way to do it, but hey. So we get towards the end of the night. We're back with Claudia and Matthew. Matthew gets home from work, and Claudia shares the news. I don't think he saw her at the rig, because Claudia shares the news that she ended up driving to try and surprise him, but he wasn't there. So they celebrate, and they finally get, affectionate and handsy and kissy, which is good, because the way he's been pushy has not been great. And I'm glad it wasn't pushy in that way. So it's like it's organic that they came back together and they're, finding each other again and like loving each other again, which is nice to see. So then we see Blake and Crystal enjoying an evening horse ride on the property. And then we see Steven pull up and basically kind of throws it in Blake's face and like, hey, I got a job with Matthew, nana nana boo boo. Obviously Blake doesn't like that. And then he gets a little on Steven about it. And as Steven drives off, Crystal's like, hey, you're being a little too hard on him. Maybe ease up, because I understand you want him to learn under you, but because they don't say it, but because he's gay, you don't want him to learn under you, or you want him to do it. You want him to learn harder than everybody else. Understandably, because he's your son, but even more so because he's gay. So he's like, hey, you need to back off. This is my family. I will handle my son how I handle my son. All right, do what you gotta do, bro. So after their horse ride, Blake and Crystal go back to the house. And as Crystal is talking to the chef, Blake walks in to let Joseph know, hey, we're having a dinner party and I'm inviting 10 people. And he's like, by the way, some of those 10 people are Walter, Matthew, and his wife, Claudia. So that's going to be interesting. I don't know. Obviously, Claudia has a clue that he's been cheating, but Claudia doesn't know who he's cheating, who he cheated with. And I feel like, Crystal does say everybody in that room knows that I was with Matthew. So why are you making this even more awkward for me? Or you're trying to embarrass me? Which, I mean, it does come off of him trying to embarrass her, but it's more of him throwing his power around because there's that power struggle. I mean, she was the secretary, he was the CEO. So there's already that power struggle between them two, and he's trying to keep that dominance over her. So yeah, in a way, he is trying to embarrass her, which, damn, girl. So as she feels the type of way about him inviting, obviously, those guests, she also brings up the fact that a lot of the staff have been kind of ignoring her or kind of mistreating her, not mistreating her, but ignoring her wishes about like, oh, I want to do this, or I want to have some flowers in my room. So Blake ends up calling all the staff to the kitchen and like reprimanding them. And it's like, hey, she's a new Miss Carrington. She's a new lady of the house. You need to listen to her. And he ends up firing the gardener as like a lesson because he's like, oh no, he'll just ask for his job back and I'll just say yes. And I'm like, that's kind of manipulative. But hey, rich white people, right? Rich white people, right? So they go up to bed, and then Fallon was getting ready for a date. Now we think it was with Jeff because when she's on the way to the date, Michael stops her and is basically like, where are you off to looking all fancy like that? And she's like, none of your fucking business. But we end up finding out that she's on a date with Cecil, his uncle, who's the CEO of Colby Coal Oil, which... he's older. And she tells him that, like, I'm more into older women. You're a little too young for me. And they're like walking on this path near a lake, and they ended up sharing a kiss, which was awkward. Cause then after that, he's like, I want you to marry my nephew. And it's like, so why did I kiss you? In my event, I'm like, why did I kiss you? You want me to marry your nephew? I don't know why. I understand that she's trying to flirt with him to get ahead, I guess, with not just possibly running her own company, but also trying to have Cecil help her dad out with the troubles that he got going on. So he's like, listen, if you want me to help your dad out, you're going to have to marry my nephew. And she's like, well, what if I don't? And he's like, well, for him, vengeance is sweeter than sex. So she's going to have to marry that man, even though she don't want to, because she wants to help her dad out to try and make sure that the business doesn't get bankrupt or her father doesn't lose more money. So we see Blake drive up to Walter and Matt's rig, and Steven, who is getting some callus on his fingers as a blue-collar worker, thinks he went up there to embarrass him, but in actuality, he went to hand deliver the invitations for the dinner party. Obviously, Matthew is still a bit, what's this all about, Blake? And Walter is like, hey, why not? I mean, you're inviting us to a dinner party. Obviously, what is it? Matthew does mention, like, are you trying to get our leases? Is that why you're inviting us? He's like, listen, if I get him, I get him. If I don't, I don't. You're still welcome to come to my house. Because obviously with the suggestion from Fallon, he was like, you need to be more welcome. You can trap more flies with honey instead of buttermilk, is what she says. So Walter and Matthew go back to their office, and they have a back and forth to decide if they are going to go to the dinner party. And Matthew was like, he's just trying to get our leases. And Walter is like, he may get our leases, but you're going to be in a room full of bigwigs. You might as well take the advantage to, get some other deal on getting investments in our company, because we're still small and we only have the one rig. So we might as well, use it to our advantage. And then Walter also says, or is it because you're going to have to stare at Crystal all night with your feelings that you still have for her, clearly? As Crystal prepares for the dinner party, she meets with the seamstress, Mr. Beaumont. He goes over all the different designs and plans that he might have for her for what she's going to wear that night. She asks him how much is all this is going to be, and he goes from $75,000 to $100,000, which is not including the furs, So she's like, this is a lot of money. We shouldn't be spending all this money, especially if Blake is in all this money trouble. What's going on? So Fallon sits her down, basically is like, listen, we're rich people. Regardless of if we're losing money or not, this is the name of the game. We have to keep up appearances. We're going to have to spend more money to make it seem like we are okay, even though we're shit out of luck. She says, what was it called? $1 million spit in the ocean is what they call it. That's their name of the game. But Fallon really is like, may feel weird because you're not used to our lifestyle, but this is how the rich live. You're gonna have to keep up appearances, and you're gonna have to spend more money than you're used to, so that you could show your friends and your business colleagues that everything is fine, as business as usual, nothing's wrong, and then do your dealings on the side, stuff like that. So later that night, Matthew goes home with Claudia, and they discuss going to the dinner party. On Claudia's end, she feels that Matthew is hesitant on going because of her, and if she might have a mental breakdown or something like that, or might, have a moment in front of the guests and embarrass him. So she kind of throws the line back at her when he was like, I'm married to a mental patient, or I don't like being married to a mental patient as much as you don't like being one, which is crazy. But she's like, listen, I'm not going to go crazy. I'm going to go with you. I'm going to go with or without you. So I'm going to keep it together. I will not fall apart. It's important that you go for your business because you never know what this could bring for you and Walter, which makes sense. As we see the staff prepare for the dinner party, Crystal's walking around the kitchen, making sure everything's up to par. Leon the gardener made sure that there are flowers in her room because obviously he's back. So that moment in the kitchen when Blake was reprimanding the staff, even though he reprimanded the staff, he really should have reprimanded Joseph, because Joseph is the one really bringing the hammer down on them, because every time she tries to do something, they're like, Joseph likes it this way, or Joseph wants it that way. So she notices that it's mostly Joseph at the helm of the staff. So she takes him aside and she wants to look at those seating arrangements and she wants to make sure that Matthew is far away from her. But I think in the dinner party, Matthew, or at least Matthew and Claudia are far away from her, but Claudia and Matthew are sitting apart, which is weird, but whatever. So she wants to make sure that Matthew is close to Blake so that he can, schmooze him for the leases. And there's obviously some pushback on Joseph. He's like, listen, seating arrangement is how I want it because I've done it this whole time and nothing needs to change. And she's like, well, I'm the new head of this house. You're going to need to change it on my end. Do you want me to fire you? I can get Blake to fire you. Basically, I can get Blake to fire you. So you better make these seating arrangements happen. So after she does that and kind of like throws her power around, she walks away feeling a little guilt, but she has to do it because this is her new position. Like, you're going to have to throw that weight around if what you want to get done gets done. So Blake comes and kind of comforts her, gives her a nice emerald necklace with a matching pair of earrings, and kind of teases her about the conversation she had with Fallon earlier. He was like, oh, or is it too much money since I'm running out of money and we can't afford it right now? Something like that. So she reassures him that, no, I get it. I get the name of the game. I know I need to play my part. We need to keep up appearances. I get that. But she confronts him and basically like, don't lie to me. What's the real reason why you were inviting Matthew? Is it for the leases, or are you trying to undermine him in another way because of our affair? I don't think she outright said that, but like obviously the undertones are there. So she basically like, I hope you're not lying to me and that this is a true intention of him of inviting him and his wife to our dinner party. So the dinner party commences. Everybody is laughing, having a good time. And then after they eat dinner, they all, Blake suggests everybody go to the living room for brandy and cigars. And while they're at the dinner table, there is literally Matthew's like straight shot to freaking Crystal, not making it obvious at all. Like, he's not looking at anybody but Crystal. Mind you, his wife is literally 2 seats down from her, or at least 2 seats down from Fallon. Or she's sitting next to Fallon, and she's like 2 seats down from Crystal. Like, your wife is right there, peeping that you peeping Crystal. Like, you can be more obvious. What's going on? So they make their way to the living room, and Cecil, pulls Blake aside and basically is like, well, it doesn't seem like you need any help because it seems like you don't have that much money troubles. But Blake is like, nah, bruh, I actually have more money troubles than you think. So he was like, so Cecil offers, he was like, hey, if you want, once you acquire the leases, I can get a percentage of the Walter Matthew property. But he was like, nah, bro, that's a low ball. Come at me with something else. So then Cecil says, well, I can give you a blank check I can give you a good faith loan as a future in-law. And we could talk about it later once the in-laws become official. So he's kind of hinting at like Cecil's plan of getting Jeff and Fallon together to try and make sure their relationship is good that way. While Fallon has been trying to smooth and pick the brain of all the businessmen, Jeff has been literally following her around like a fucking puppy doll, like a puppy dog, trying to get her attention or like trying to whisk her away, I guess, to propose to her. But she's like, no, dude, I want to stay here. I want to talk to these guys. Like, come on. Like, let's stay at the party. So after she gets like the look, or at least gets like a small talking to from Cecil about like, keep your end of the bargain, I'm keeping mine. She finally was like, okay, fine, we'll hang out. Let's get a drink at the bar. And guess who's bartending? Michael, the driver. So since Michael is bartending and like overhearing the conversation between Jeff and Fallon, they go back and forth between like the topic of their wealth. So like him being in politics, trying to use his wealth for good, while she's just using her wealth in the way that she feels is rightfully hers. Like she gets to do whatever she wants, obviously, as a rich girl. She gets more glances from Uncle Cecil, and so she finally caves in and agrees to a one-on-one with Jeff. So they run away. Well, not run away, but they run into the courtyard and end up smoking a joint. But in the 80s, they called it grass, which is so funny because I just call it tree. It's green, red, however you take it, it's green. Y'all garden over here. So she's smoking this joint, or at least Jeff lights it up for her. And she's trying to convince him, come on, smoke with me. It's nothing big. And he's like, well, the effects of this will make you lose your memory. And da-da-da-da. She's like, just have some fun. So he finally gives in, and they start smoking the joint. They got to get down. Then we get back to the dinner party, and we see Walter doing exactly what he wanted to do, which is schmooze with the big wigs, get some opportunities, laugh, do all that, and possibly get good deals for his land, or at least good deals for investments into his land. And I think he's definitely drinking a lot. He definitely had a cigar, but it seems like he's definitely drinking a lot. But we see Matthew standing alone by himself. I don't understand why he's not with his wife. But that gives Crystal a moment to kind of swoop him away, to, talk to him privately. So, she takes this moment to, try to talk to him one-on-one about giving the leases to Blake and like telling him, oh, you'll be a rich man if you just give your leases to Blake and you'll make a lot of money, da-da-da-da. And he feels like, oh, okay, so we're only out here because Blake told you to come out here and, schmooze me. But he's like, I actually love you. I still love you. Then he was like, oh, I still love you. And she's all confused because when he came back and she's like trying to see where they were at, he said there is no feelings, even though you're telling me you have feelings. Before I got married, you said there were no feelings. And he was like, oh, I was trying to do what was best for us at the time, which is bullshit. And she was like, well, I can make my own decisions. I'm a grown fucking woman. I don't need you to tell me what's best for me at whatever time you feel. I'll make the decision on my damn self, okay? So she walks away from that conversation because it was getting ridiculous. And as she walks away, Claudia walks in just in time. And basically Matthew's like, hey, this party's getting boring. You want to go? She was like, yes, please. She's ready to go because earlier, when Crystal first whisked Matthew away, Claudia went to go get some air, or at least some time away from all the rich people. And she went to the study just to, have a moment to herself, but doesn't realize that Stephen was there hanging out. And so her and Stephen have a one-on-one, or have a heart-to-heart more so. He is very direct with his questioning about her staying at a mental hospital and tries to comfort her and saying, there were a lot of geniuses in our time that were considered crazy people or considered outcasts. Like, I think he mentions Emily Dickinson and takes a book and like gives it to her so she can read it for comfort. And it's like, even Emily Dickinson was considered an outcast, but I consider her very special. And he was like, oh, I think you're very special, something like that too. So they have a nice moment of, comfort, so she doesn't feel completely out of place, because clearly, with the whole class divide situation, which it was nice. So once Matthew and Claudia leave the courtyard we see that Fallon and Jeff overheard what they were saying, or overheard his love confession. Now Jeff is high out of his mind, so he don't know what the fuck is going on. He's just like, did they see us smoke? Did they see us smoke? Like, no, they didn't see you smoke. They can probably smell it, but they definitely didn't see you smoke. It's pitch black out here. So Fallon is more on the side of, I can use this information to my advantage, plotting and thickening and whatever. So Matthew goes back to the party to, get Walter so they can go home. And basically Matthew's like, I don't feel right. We shouldn't be doing this. We shouldn't even be here. Like, I think this was a mistake. And Walter is like, listen, dude, this is the name of the game, okay? We're in this business. We have to schmooze, we have to shake hands, make shady deals, just so that we can get ahead and get more land so we can get more oil. So basically Matthew was like, nah, I'm not with that. So I think in that argument, Walter walks away, but Matthew goes back in the party and basically unshake his hand. He was like, whatever deal he just made, I'm taking it back. And right before he leaves, Blake stops him and was like, you're making a mistake, dude. Like, if you really want to make it in this business, you have to do what you got to do and follow what Walter is trying to do. And he was like, nah, not like this, man. So basically, once he walks away, Blake and Cecil are basically like, we're going to take them down and it's time to tank their business. And so as they're having that moment, Joseph comes in the party and grabs Crystal, and he's like, there's a situation only the lady of the house can deal with. So she goes outside, or he takes her outside and shows that Fallon and Jeff with their high asses then took a skinny dip into the pool. So she's like, get your ass out the pool. Come on. Time to get out the pool. And so once they get out the pool, Fallon, it's like Crystal tries to reprimand Fallon and was like, this is not right. You shouldn't be doing this, especially with all that's going on. And and your father is trying to, keep appearances. And she's like, well, what do you know about appearances? And then throws what Matthew said to her in her face and was like, I love you, or I'm a grown woman, showing her that I overheard your conversation. So now Crystal's left at the pool just stunned and shut out of luck because Fallon at any moment can tell her father what happened. So Blake gets a call from his Chicago office to make sure that the funds between Colby Coal Oil and Denver Carrington Oil get transferred over correctly. And Steven gets a call on the phone from a man named Ted, who is in town on business wanting to visit him. Wink, wink. I think they were lovers because obviously he's gay, but they're not going to outright say it yet, but they're hinting at it. So he gets a call basically saying, I would like to meet up so we can talk while I'm here on business. And, Steven agrees. And so he's going to meet up with him after work. Then the Carringtons meet in the dining room for breakfast. As Blake is reading the newspaper, Fallon is hinting at the conversation between Matthew and Crystal from the dinner party, but doesn't outright say who she's hinting at, but just letting Crystal know, like, bitch, I still got this information I can drop on you at any second. As the Carringtons are enjoying their breakfast, Jeff comes in to visit them, or really visit Fallon. And he apologizes for them getting stoned and skinny dipping. And then, Fallon teases Steven. Or no, she teases both Jeff and Steven. She's like, Jeff, I wish you were more like Steven, a hardworking, depressed, anxiety-ridden man. And then he leaves because it's like, thanks, Fallon. That's all you see me now is this anxiety-ridden, depressed man. But as Steven leaves, Blake goes after him and basically like, hey, how you doing? How's the rig going? And Steven sees this as like an opportunity for Blake to spy on the operation. But he's like, listen, I have a man on the inside. I don't need you to spy for me. Okay. I already know. He was like, I already know this A, B, C, D. Okay. So you ain't got to worry about me using you as a spy. I just want to check up on you. And then he bounces. So as Steven is leaving towards his car, Crystal comes up behind him for some comfort and gives him another book and some chocolate, some foreign chocolate, some nice chocolate, some expensive chocolate, because I'm sure it's an expensive chocolate. And basically, Steven gives him some advice about Fallon and says, she's a daddy's girl. She doesn't think that there's any woman that's good enough for her father. So don't feel like she's coming for you specifically. She's coming for any woman that probably her father has been dating since, I'm assuming, her mother, which we still don't know about. So we follow Steven back at the rig. He's talking to some of the coworkers. It looks like they have a living quarters. So I don't know if y'all know about like firefighters like stay at the firehouse. It kind of looks like they have a setup like that. Like there's a trailer for the workers to stay at, I guess, if they don't have living quarters or they don't live near the rig. So it's like somewhere for them to stay. But so he's there with the other workers as, you know, they're getting ready to work their shift. He's still getting teased about being at Carrington, even though some of the workers have like embraced him, like, you know, you're working with us, you're working with the blue collar workers, you're really getting your hands dirty. That last name is still gonna get him some pushback from some people, just because, you know, they have that, they feel like because he's a Carrington, he still has that entitlement, which is fair. You know, he's a rich white boy. And then we see Walter and Matthew going through some papers, and apparently there's some missing papers. Now, Walter is definitely low-key hinting at it possibly being Steven, because we know how hell-bent Carrington is on making sure that their business now fails because he can't get the lease anymore. So now Carrington is doing everything in his power to make sure that they fail. So Walter thinks Steven might have something to do with it, but we don't know, because if Carrington or if Blake already has information about their business not through Steven, then who does he have this information through? My guess is Ed, only because of what happens at the end of the show, end of the episode, but we'll get there. So Steven comes in, basically giving him some papers, and Matthew exchanges it for a book that Steven lent to Claudia at the dinner party. And I guess Claudia didn't understand that he was like gifting it to her as like a keepsake. But because Ted's name was in the book, she was like, it's not mine. So he gave it back. So he took it because obviously he wasn't ready to, I guess, to be open to them about him being gay, or at least that relationship. And Walter is still hinting at it possibly being Steven, but Matthew reassures, and I think kind of like vouches for him, like, trust me, it's not him. It's not him. It's not him. As Matthew is, you know, longing after the book that has Ted's name in it, he calls Ted and I guess changes their meeting point. So he was going to meet Ted at the hotel he's staying at, but he was like, meet me at Avenue 17 in Meadsburg off of a highway. So I guess it's more inconspicuous, because if Ted is not fully out yet, because it seems like he's some type of either businessman or some type of politician, if Ted is not fully out yet, he doesn't want to ruin it for him, which is understandable, especially in the 80s. If you had, you know, if you come out as gay, then it's like you have the gay disease and you're this and that. And so it's probably really bad for at least Ted's image. So we jump to Fallon in her room getting ready for the day. And then her father comes in to check in on her because he's had a chat with Cecil about Fallon marrying Jeff. And she's upset because Cecil wasn't supposed to tell him. It was supposed to be like a bargain between them two. You know, if she marries Jeff, then he can help out her dad's company. So because Cecil spilled the beans, now it's like two powerful men are like behind her, or like not behind her, but like on her shoulders, pressuring her to marry someone she's not in love with, or at least marry someone she doesn't really give a fuck about. It's just someone she knew from when they were kids. Obviously, they're two different people now. He's like this square, and she's like this free spirit, rich girl who just wants to live life. So she's getting ready to go to Colby Co. Oil, and Michael drives her there. Now, Michael's trying to make her jealous. Basically, he's like, hey, you want to hang out tonight? Actually, I can't. I have a date. Yeah, okay, whatever. It doesn't faze her. She rolls like water off a duck's back. Yeah, okay. So she goes in and she meets with Cecil first and kind of like reprimands him. It's like, why did you tell my dad this was supposed to be between us? I don't want to go through this marriage. I'd rather marry you since you're the CEO of the company and you could just help us outright if I just marry you. But he's like, no, it doesn't make sense. I'm older, even though like the whole situation with Blake and Crystal with, you know, her being younger, marrying an old man with money, seems like she's significantly younger. I would say 20s. So if you're in your 20s marrying like this old man, possibly 60s, 70s, would not, no, I wouldn't do that. Girl, you got so much life ahead of you. I would not be marrying that old man at all. Money or nothing. I don't care. Like, I mean, he could drop dead at any moment and then all that money's yours. I think that's what she's thinking about. But I digress. He doesn't want to marry you. You're not the woman for him, or you're not woman enough for him yet. So as she pleads to him and was like, "Oh, I'd rather marry you," he's like, "No." She then visits Jeff in his office and is like, "Why don't we just go to lunch together and like, have a afternoon together?" And he's like, "No, I got meetings. She's like, "No, come hang out with me. We could just, do a thing." Since apparently he's supposed to be proposing to her, he has yet to do that. They're supposed to be marrying each other, but he has yet to propose, or even like there's no inkling of he might be proposing because he's just like very dense in the head. Like, dude, hello. He mentioned it in the first episode at the wedding, but then never brings it up again. So, like, he tries to have all these one-on-one moments and like there's opportunity, but he gets caught up in her free spirit, like, woo moments, and he forgets that he's supposed to be going on down one knee and saying, "Will you marry me?" So once they agree to go to lunch, Fallon goes back to her car to let Michael know, "Hey, I'm going to go back with Jeff. Don't wait up." So since he's not waiting up for Fallon, he decides to throw his hat off, go to the secretary, her name is Jennifer, and ask her out on a date that he was supposed to have, that he told Fallon earlier. Yeah, okay. So he never even have a date. He was just lying out his ass, and then he just found a date just so that he could make Fallon jealous. Boy, bye. So we're back at the Carrington home where I guess Crystal, and Blake are supposed to have lunch together, but while they're waiting for Blake to join them, it's just Cecil and Crystal, and he's basically trying to give her a warning of like, hey, when it comes to this business, your husband is a risk taker, and he like compares him to a dangerous hunter, and that his pride gets in the way of his decisions a lot. So like, he makes all these risky decisions knowing that the pack is after, or like knowing that they're not going to last long because the pack is just right there. I don't even know what that meant. But he basically was telling her like, your husband does a lot of shady dealings, be cautious. So we meet Ted at Avenue 17, and we find out that they lived together for about a year in New York. Oh, they had an apartment together, and that Ted actually didn't have any business to come out. He didn't have any business to come out here for. He just came out here to see Steven because he missed Steven. This scene was really sweet because it was just, a man confessing his love for his boyfriend that he missed so much and that he wanted him to come back. I know it's just sad because obviously, like, you could tell they didn't want to be outright in that moment, especially in the diner, but he's still like confessing his love, and you could see that Steven is like toying with the idea of going back to him because apparently he just up and split and was like, I need to go find myself, and then just left him in the apartment. But Ted was just literally came here to win him back, but it didn't work because it seems like Steven is content and at least happy with working on the rig with Matthew and Walter, and actually learning some things about himself while working on the rig, which is nice. Especially, I'm assuming they haven't said the ages, but I'm assuming Fallon and Steven are in their 20s. And the 20s is definitely a time for you to find yourself, what you want to do with the rest of your life, who you are, and getting to know you more as like you're getting older and becoming more of an adult after just being a kid for so long. So it's like all these different things happening all at once, which is understandable. I'm 28 going on 29, and I'm dealing with that myself. I'm in between jobs trying to figure out what the fuck I want to do in my life. So I totally understand it, dude. And he's utilizing this moment working on the rig. Even though he would have used it working with his dad, he was able to get this job on his own so that he can figure himself out on his own. And he didn't want to do that tied to a boyfriend, which I totally get. So as Steven gets up to tell Ted this is over, I'm really working on myself, we see that there's an onlooker from another booth that might know Steven. He looks like he was one of the workers, but I don't know just yet. Or at the moment, I didn't know who he was just yet, but he definitely was spying on him. So we see Michael driving around Blake, and he overhears Blake on the car phone, which I don't understand why we don't have car phones anymore. I understand all our phones are mobile, but like imagine having like a separate landline phone in the car. Like that's really cool. The 80s used to be so innovative. Like what happened to society? I don't understand. But Blake is on the car phone having a discussion about trying to figure out why Matthew Walter's business keep getting credits because he keeps denying, or at least he has pull on all the big banks in Denver to not give them their business, but there is a bank because he has money. They are getting money for their supplies. So he's trying to figure out where that money is coming from. And Michael takes it upon himself to not only find the bank, but also talk to one of the associates to be like, hey, if I'm with Blake Carrington, I'm an associate Blake Carrington. If you keep giving Walter and Matthew their business, something might happen to your family. And it might just not be an accident. And that's fucking crazy. And that's bold as fuck of him because that bank associate ends up calling Blake to like make sure it was real, but he could have called the police. Like that was very risky of him, but it worked in his favor because Blake calls Michael to his office and it's like, hey, that was fucked up. You're lucky he called me and not the FBI or the police or whoever with you threatening fucking putting his children on drugs or putting them in an accident on purpose, not on purpose. Like, that's crazy. But you're lucky that they call me and not the fucking police. And because of that risky move, he's like, you remind me of my younger self. Don't do that again. But if you are going to do it again, you're going to do it under me. And I'm going to tell you versus you doing it on your own. I'm going to give you $100 pay raise a week. But don't do that again unless I'm telling you what to do unquestioned. That's going to be some shady dealings in the future. I just know that for sure. And then we see what Fallon and Jeff have been up to. They took Blake's jet and jet it off somewhere and having a nice afternoon rendezvous, dancing on the plane, drinking, drunk as fuck. Jeff confesses that he loves Fallon. Clearly she doesn't say it back because she does not love him. But, you know, she's there for a good time. Might as well hook up with this semi-cute dude I knew from, like, when I was a kid. Which I also think is weird that she wants to marry Cecil. Because if Jeff knew you since you were 11, didn't Cecil know you since you were 11? That's very creepy. Why would someone that you knew from, like, a kid that was already an adult, that is now more of an adult, why would you want to marry them? Like, that's very weird. Like, he doesn't want to marry her. She's like insisting on marrying him. There's like some Stockholm syndrome going on, and I don't understand why. Or maybe some daddy issues. Who knows? So we are back at the rig, and all the men, I guess, are getting ready for the night shift. We see one of the workers. His name is Ed. He ends up coming in stinking drunk, and we find out he's the onlooker from the restaurant that was spying on Ted and Steven, which makes me think that Ed is the spy for Blake and not Steve. And then he's going to make it seem like it's Steve because Blake's going to tell him to make it seem like it's Steve. And, you know, see, some shady shit is going down. But Ed comes in drunk as fuck from his date with whoever he was with and basically tries to out Steven and calls him a prevert. He kept saying prevert. I don't know if he was trying to have a Denver accent or it's the 80s, but he just kept calling him a prevert. And I'm like, he trying to say pervert? I don't know why, but he just kept saying prevert. If I say prevert because of this fucking show, I'm gonna be really mad. Why are we saying prevert? Like, even if you have an accent and you're from the Midwest or the from the Midwest, why are we saying prevert? But he kept calling him a prevert, and Matthew sticks up for Steven and was basically like, hey. Oh, no. Steven jumps up and is like, I don't know what you're talking about, and then he's like, it's none of your damn business. He takes a swing at him almost, and then Matthew breaks it up. He's like, hey, you step outside, dude, chill, okay? I like you. You're a good worker, but if you're going to keep doing this, you need to stop. And then he was like, oh, are you also one of those preverts? Is that why your wife was in the hospital all that time? Listen, rightfully so, homie took a swing at him and they get to tussling, okay? They start throwing chairs at each other. I think Ed almost threw a bottle on him. Mind you, Matthew is Ed's boss. So you get to tussling with your boss on the site? That's crazy. So they get to tussling. They're not young at all either. And they throwing each other around, beating each other up. And then at some point they stop because, again, they're not young. They're going to break something if they keep going. So Steven steps outside and Matthew follows him to, make sure he's okay. And then Matthew, they have a heart to heart where Steven actually lets him know, he's like, hey, I'm gay and I'm not ashamed of it. And I was in love with my roommate. It was about a year. I may go back to him. I may not, but I'm not ashamed of who I am as a gay man, which is amazing to see, especially in the 80s, to have someone very staunch in who they are and how they identify themselves. So he's like, I'm a gay man. I'm not ashamed of it. I love men. And I really like working on this rig. And if people like Ed are going to keep giving me a hard time, I understand, but I really hope to stay on the rig. And I really hope Matthew does keep him on the rig, because clearly this is good for Steven. Rather he doing man work or whatever, it's a good time for Steven to do something on his own, separate from his father, but still learning the business and possibly impressing his father by what he knows, by being a worker, boots on the ground, So back at the Carrington house, there's a lot of commotion going on. You hear, I thought it was possibly the workers being drunk and loud as hell, but no, it was Fallon and Jeff drunk, stumbling in from, apparently they went to Vegas, from their trip to Vegas, where they went to one of those quickie marriage chapels and they got married. I mean, she had to take matters into her own hands, because he wasn't doing nothing. He wasn't getting down on one knee. He wasn't saying, Fallon, will you marry me? He just said, he just confessed that he loved her on the plane. And she's like, these two old men, my father and my uncle technically, are pressuring me to marry you, and you have no clue to get down on one knee and say, I want to marry you. So let's just go to this chapel, drunk as shit, and let's get married. And so they're happy because it happened, but she's just, she's not happy because she's not married to someone she doesn't want to be married to. The next morning, we see Steven getting a letter from Ted with some photo keepsakes, because obviously he misses him so much. And we also see Crystal and Blake in a tennis match with Jeff and Fallon, the newlyweds. They let Blake and Crystal know that they'll be staying at the house for a while they get their own space. Then we cut to the Blasdell residence while Claudia is making Matthew his lunch for the day, and Lindsay's getting ready for school. Claudia lets Matthew know that Ed's wife is going around town telling people about Steven being gay and basically the fight that they had at the rig, which I'm surprised that he didn't tell Claudia. She was like, why didn't you tell me? Which is, that's your wife. But while they're getting ready to leave, Lindsay lets her mom know, hey, I have a friend named Christopher who's going to come over and rehearse some lines. Lets her know that she has a crush on him, or at least she finds him cute. Back at the Carrington house, we see Fallon and Jeff leave for the day hand in hand, unbeknownst to Michael, as he's finding out that they just got married. And we know that Fallon doesn't really like Jeff, but he invites her to a date for a movie night, and she gives him a big old smooch in front of Michael on purpose. And so because he is now just finding out that they're married, takes her to, while he's taking her to town, he stops on the side of the road to confront her, like, why did you get married? Why didn't you tell me? Basically like, oh, I'm moving up and gaining your father's trust and earning more money so we can be together. But she's like, he was like, why are you getting married? Because obviously she's in love with him. She's not telling him, but he's being very forceful. Like, he's pushing up her against a tree. He's trying to force a kiss. And it's like, bruh, back off. And she even says, I'm married now. Like, I don't want to be a cheater in my marriage, even though she does not love him. She doesn't want to be known as a cheater. So she's very adamant on trying to push him off. And it's like, hey, I'm married. Please back off. While he's still trying to be all bravado about his new position with Blake and how he's gained his trust. So we see Crystal and Blake are in the kitchen canoodling over some Spanish omelets. And she uses this opportunity, since he's home, he's taking the day off to spend with his wife. She's like, I want to have a more prominent role in your, or not prominent role, but I want to be more involved in your business. So I would like to be your secretary. She asked, I guess he didn't say yes before. So she asked him again, I would like to be your secretary. And he was like, okay, I have a serious question for you. I want more babies. Bro, you're as old as dirt. What do you mean you want more babies? You already have 2 grown-ish children. Well, no, they're grown because they're about in their 20s. You have 2 grown children. Why do you need more babies? If she has a baby right now, you'd probably be dead in the dirt by the time that baby is Fallon's age. I don't know why you're asking for another baby. But I guess because they're newlyweds, he wants more heirs. whatever. And now we're back with, oh no, we're not back. They cuts to a motel, and we see that Michael is now having an afternoon rendezvous with Jennifer, the secretary, since Fallon keeps rejecting him. That's now his second best, which I feel bad for because Jennifer is so much better than that. She deserves so much more than that. But we really see that he's there to get some information on behalf of Blake to try and see what's going down at Colby Co. And even though Jennifer peeps it a little bit, and Michael kind of gives her more information to be like, I guess to like even the playing field of like sharing information. So it's like, I'll share this intimate detail about myself, and you can give me more information about what's going on in your boss's office. So he shares that his mother died in childbirth and he has a stepmom. And then she finally lets it out that the plan for Fallon to get married was a pact that her and Cecil made that I guess Blake doesn't know the whole truth about the pact. She spills the beans to Michael, and then Michael obviously is going to take that back to Blake. So now, since they had their little afternoon rendezvous, we see that Lindsay comes home from school with her friend Christopher so they can rehearse some lines. Claudia leaves a note for her to let her know that she left for a little bit to go visit a friend, but in reality, she went to go see her therapist because she has some concerns since the dinner party, and obviously seeing her husband acting the way he was, being all weird, or at least Crystal also acting weird towards her. She's concerned about the fact that she met, like while she was in the hospital, gone for so long, her husband possibly cheated, and that she doesn't, like, for a while, she thought the women he cheated with were faceless people, but since the dinner party, she was able to put a face to a possible woman that he slept with. But she thinks it's probably multiple women versus it was just Crystal the whole time. So she, going to her therapist and crying about it and letting it all out. So while Claudia is at the therapist, Lindsay and Chris are rehearsing their lines, but Chris gets a little handsy and like forcefully kisses. Well, not at first. At first, he like kisses her and they're okay with it. But then he gets a little too far for Lindsay's comfort. And basically, she like pushes him off. And he's like, you're just as crazy as your mother, which is very rude because she's just rejecting your unwanted advances, asshole. She's not crazy. She knows her boundaries. And obviously, that upset Lindsay. So in a fit of panic, she takes her mom's car and she drives it off. We don't know where she goes at first, but I think soon we find out she ends up taking it to I figured, but she takes it to her dad's rig. But before Lindsay gets to her dad, we're back at the rig, and Steven is still being teased, but instead of being a Carrington, this time he's being teased for being gay. Obviously, he's the same asshole who's teasing him. And Matthew takes him aside to try and be like, hey, we appreciate your hard work. You're doing a great job. Why don't you come over for dinner with me, my wife, and my kid? And at first, obviously, Steven thought he was just, oh, you're just trying to be nice to me because I'm gay? But no, he was actually trying to bring some comfort. So finally, Claudia gets home from her therapy session and finds out that Lindsay left with the car. So she calls Matthew in a panic. He jumps in the car to go look for her. And so when he leaves, that's when Lindsay comes. And then Walter is able to be there when Lindsay goes to the rig and kind of looks after her until her parents come. And she's all hysterical about the moment, obviously. And Walter tries to calm her down and be like, hey, what was it? She asked Walter, like, am I going to inherit my mom's crazy or whatever? And he's like, you can't inherit her mental issues or her mental breakdown, which that's a lie. You can inherit. I think, is it like that you can't inherit things like that from people? So Walter tries to calm her down and lets her know you could talk to your mom about anything. So her parents make it back to the rig. Claudia picks her up and they go home together and they have a heart-to-heart in the car. She basically like guesses everything was correct just based on her daughter's behavior. So she's like, she calls her, she's like, you guys are not kids. You guys are young women and young men. She reveals that she's only 14 years old. So I don't understand. 14, if you're a teen, you're a child. Young women and young men, you don't become a young woman or young man until you're in your 20s. That's when you're still young, but you're a man or a woman. You're a teen, you're a freaking child. And Claudia let it be known that no matter what to always make sure that the person you're with treats you with respect in any way, shape, or form. So obviously telling her that she has boundaries and that you wouldn't let anyone go past that boundary if you don't want them to. Well, it's dinner time, and at least dinner time at the Blazels, and Stephen is over, and it's so funny when they're passing each other the plates like an assembly line. So like each person is passing the meatloaf, each person is passing the potatoes or whatever. It's really funny. But Lindsay's asking Stephen all these questions about his time in New York City, how she's so excited that once she gets enough money, even though she's still a kid, once she gets enough money, she'll be able to go jet off whenever she wants. And then her and Matthew go upstairs to help her with her homework while they leave Claudia and Stephen downstairs to have another heart-to-heart or have coffee and just chat. Back at the Carringtons, Michael lets Blake know that Cecil and Fallon had a pact behind his back about her marrying Jeff in order for Cecil to save Blake's company. And obviously he's not liking that because whatever conversation him and Cecil had about their plan for Fallon to marry and help him out with the company, it obviously he didn't tell him everything because he was just angry. He was angry when he found out, and then later in the episode when he actually confronts Fallon about it, he is upset. He's like, I don't need your help, I don't need your pity, I've gone this long being a businessman without your help, I don't need you trying to make any pacts with anybody. He understands that he's angry about it for sure, but he still doesn't want her. He still wants her to continue to be married to Jeff so he can keep that alliance between them. So even though he hates it, he knows it's still a good thing because she's like, okay, because she's expressing greatly that she doesn't love Jeff. She doesn't want to be with Jeff. She even she threatens to take her wedding ring off, and he's like, don't you dare do that. You're going to keep the marriage and you're going to make it work. And it's like, but you were angry that I had this pact with this dude. Now you want me to be with him? It's like, make up your mind, dude. What do you want me to do? You want me to stay with him now because now it's in your benefit and helping your company. But I'm miserable and I don't love this fucker. So after that lashing, we go back to the Blaisdells where Claudia and Stephen are continuing their heart-to-heart. She lets him know that she knows that he's gay, and to kind of gives him advice, not advice, but kind of convinces him like maybe you should quit. Or no, he expresses that like it's becoming harder now because now that more people know that I'm gay, I'm getting teased more, it's harder to work there, I'm like getting shut out. She's like, why don't you just quit? Even though Matthew won't be his boss, she's like, you're always welcome in my home and we can always have a chat. And then there was like a moment where like, it was like a meet cute moment where he like drops the plate and it breaks, and then they like touch hands and he kisses her. I'm like, what? He's supposed to be gay. Why is he having this moment? I thought I hate when they do this in shows when the character comes out as gay and like they have a moment with the opposite sex of, oh, maybe I'm not gay. No, you know you're gay. Don't go back. You already know you're gay. Why are we doing this? I understand the 80s and whatever the hell, but I don't like this teasing of, oh, he might be gay. No, he's gay. Hello there. Upon recording and editing this video, I didn't realize how long this will take. So we're going to split up season 1 of the 1981 version into 2 parts, or at least into 2 videos. And then I'm sure the 2017 one is going to be split up into multiple parts as well, since that season is like 20 episodes long. I still want to do the differences and comparison because watching the reboot when it came out and watching this, I definitely see the parallels and I really want to make the connections, but that's going to take some time. And in the meantime, I'm definitely going to be interested in reviewing the international housewife shows, like the ones in Melbourne, Cheshire, London, Lagos, because them girls be getting into some drama overseas. So I'm definitely interested in watching those. But in the meantime, enjoy the video. Or thank you for enjoying the video. Like, comment, subscribe, do what you got to do, and I'll see you in the next one.